Summer 2006. Northern Israel. For 34 days straight, Hezbollah rained more than 4,000 rockets down on Israeli cities, 100 rockets a day, every day, for over a month. Israel's Air Force flew thousands of sorties trying to hunt the launchers. It barely made a dent. The rockets just kept coming. When it was over, Israel's defense establishment sat down and asked a question they had avoided for years. What do you do when the enemy's weapon costs less than your fuel? That question cost 5 years and $100 million to answer. The answer looked, to most people, like a simple missile launcher on a truck. They were wrong. In a minute, I'll show you the calculation inside that truck that changed modern air defense, and the same calculation that critics say could eventually be turned against it. This is the story of Iron Dome, built to solve an impossible problem on a limited budget, and why its greatest strength might also be its most exploitable weakness. Before Iron Dome, Israel had a problem that money couldn't easily fix, not because the technology didn't exist, but because the threat was too cheap to justify a traditional response. A Qassam rocket, the kind fired from Gaza, costs a few $100s to build. You can make them from steel piping, fertilizer, and sugar. They're not accurate, they're not sophisticated, but they don't need to be. Fire enough of them, and some will land somewhere that matters. The standard military answer to rockets is counter-battery fire, shoot back at the launcher. But a launcher that fires and moves in 60 seconds is almost impossible to hit in time. And if it hides among civilian infrastructure, you have a different problem entirely. So the question in the early 2000s was brutal and specific. How do you protect a civilian population from thousands of cheap rockets when the reaction window is 15 seconds and the attacker has nothing to lose? The engineers at Rafael Advanced Defense Systems faced 3 demands at once. First, intercept speed. A rocket fired from 10 kilometers gives you seconds. Detect, track, calculate, and fire with almost no human in the loop. Second, discrimination. If you fire an interceptor at every incoming round, you run out of interceptors before your enemy runs out of rockets. You have to know which ones are actually threats. Third, cost control. Every interceptor fired costs $50,000. Every rocket being stopped might cost $500. Get that math wrong, and the system bankrupts you faster than the enemy destroys you. Most systems manage 2 of those 3. Iron Dome was engineered to hit all 3 at once. Here's the part most people miss. The interception computer doesn't just track incoming rockets, it calculates impact points and then decides whether to engage. If the projected landing zone is an open field, a beach, or a road at 3 in the morning, the system lets it fall. No interceptor fired, no money spent. That discrimination algorithm is not a feature. It is the entire philosophy of the system. The Tamir interceptor, the missile Iron Dome fires, uses a proximity fuse and an active radar seeker. It doesn't have to hit the incoming rocket directly. It detonates close enough to destroy it mid-air, which widens the engagement window and keeps reliability high, even against fast-moving targets. 2 Tamirs are typically assigned per threat, not 1. That redundancy is baked in from the start. Each battery covers roughly 150 square kilometers. A single radar dish feeds continuous data to a battle management center. The battery itself is mobile. It can reposition in hours, not days. This is where the design looks like overkill, but it isn't. The mobility means adversaries can't simply map its coverage and route around it. The network means batteries hand off targets to each other as a threat crosses coverage zones. And the automatic discrimination means the system conserves interceptors for threats that actually matter. It's not a gun, it's a mobile, thinking, discriminating air denial machine. Before Iron Dome, Israeli communities near Gaza or Lebanon had two options when rockets came: shelter in place or evacuate. Neither was sustainable for a civilian economy. After Iron Dome reached operational deployment in 2011, that changed. Israeli civilians could stay in their homes. Industries kept running. The psychological effect of rocket fire, always the bigger strategic objective for the attackers, was blunted. During Operation Protective Edge in 2014, Israel officially reported interception rates above 90% over multiple weeks of sustained fire. Some independent analysts, including MIT physicist Theodore Postal, have disputed that figure, arguing the real rate was considerably lower based on blast pattern analysis. What's not in dispute is the outcome. Cities that would have faced evacuation stayed functional. That's not just a weapon, that's deterrence from the inside out. If you want more engineering breakdowns like this, subscribe. Now let's get to the part that defense economists actually argue about. At its core, Iron Dome is a probability machine. It doesn't aim for perfection. It aims for an acceptable level of protection at a manageable cost. The radar detects the launch. Trajectory is computed in seconds. Impact point is predicted. The system decides threat or no threat. If it's a threat, 2 Tamirs are assigned. For rockets fired from medium range, the entire sequence completes in well under a minute. At very short ranges, under 4 kilometers, the flight time is too brief for the system to engage at all. Iron Dome was never designed for that. It was designed for the threat that actually dominates the battlefield: rockets fired from 5 to 70 kilometers out. What makes the system genuinely dangerous to an attacker is that the choices are opaque from the outside. The attacker doesn't know which rockets will be intercepted and which won't. That unpredictability is part of the deterrence. Fire at a city and you don't know which rounds will reach it. You can't plan around the gaps because you can't see the gaps. But here's the limitation they don't put on the brochure. Every Tamir interceptor costs $50,000. Every Qassam rocket that triggers one might have cost $500 to build. That's a 100-to-1 cost ratio in the attacker's favor. If an adversary fires enough rockets, they don't need to break through Iron Dome. They just need to drain it. The Royal United Services Institute calculated that defending against 10,000 rockets using Iron Dome interceptors would cost approximately $500 million in interceptor expenditure alone. That figure doesn't include battery maintenance, crew, or resupply logistics. It's just the missiles themselves. Iran understood this before anyone said it out loud. Before Operation Rising Lion in June 2025, Iran was building toward a stockpile of 8,000 ballistic missiles. Not all of them sophisticated, many of them designed purely to overwhelm. Fire enough in enough simultaneous waves, and even an 86% interception rate means hundreds of warheads still reach the ground. During the 12-day war in June 2025, Iran fired approximately 630 missiles. Around 500 reached Israeli airspace. Israel's claimed interception rate was 86%. That means somewhere between 60 and 80 missiles got through. The Kiryat, Israel's fortified military headquarters in Tel Aviv, took a strike. Residential areas in central Israel were hit. The system worked, and things still got through. Both of those statements are true at the same time. That is the trap critics are describing. Not that Iron Dome fails, but that the economics reward adversaries willing to produce cheap munitions at scale and simply keep going. The system can't be the whole answer when the other side controls the cost of the inputs. Think of Israeli air defense as a series of layers, each one built for a different altitude and threat type. Iron Dome sits at the bottom of that stack, handling short-range rockets and artillery shells flying at low altitude. David's Sling sits above it, handling medium to long-range missiles. Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 sit at the top, intercepting ballistic missiles in the upper atmosphere and beyond. THAAD, the American system, operates in the same altitude band as Arrow. $1 billion per battery, $12.7 million per interceptor. Iron Dome, by contrast, costs $100 million per battery and $50,000 per interceptor. They are not competing. They solve different problems at different altitudes. The point is that none of these systems were designed to carry the whole weight alone. Each one hands off to the next. The architecture only holds if every layer holds simultaneously, which is precisely why Iran's saturation strategy was designed to stress all of them at once. The trade-off was brutal but deliberate. Build a cheaper system that handles the cheap threat and leave the expensive systems for the expensive threats. That logic held until the enemy started launching both simultaneously. Which is exactly why what happened in 2025 changed the calculation completely. Iron Beam, also developed by Rafael, became operational with the IDF in 2025. It's a directed energy laser system. Each engagement costs a few dollars in electricity, not $50,000. A few dollars. If Iron Beam handles the short-range, cheap rocket layer, the economic asymmetry problem shrinks dramatically. The attacker's math stops working. You can no longer drain Israel's defense budget by firing garage-built rockets at scale. There's a second shift that matters. By March 2026, the U.S. and Israel had responded to Iran's saturation strategy not just by trying to intercept their way out of it, but by destroying the missile production infrastructure and the launchers themselves. After Operation Rising Lion in June 2025, Iran's ballistic missile stockpile dropped from roughly 2,500 missiles to somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200. Over 400 mobile launchers were reduced to around 100, still operational. Iron Dome didn't win that fight, but it kept Israel in the fight long enough for the rest of the strategy to execute. The lesson isn't that interceptors are obsolete. It's that interception alone was never supposed to be the strategy. Back to that question from 2006. What do you do when the enemy's weapon costs less than your fuel? Iron Dome was the answer, and it worked, not by stopping everything, but by stopping the right things, long enough, often enough, to keep a country functioning under fire. That decision, made in milliseconds, invisibly, by a machine, is both the system's genius and the seed of every serious criticism leveled at it. It works brilliantly at what it was designed to do, and it operates in a world that keeps trying to design around it. Iron Dome isn't a shield. It's a budget allocation machine that happens to shoot down rockets. And that's the dirty secret. It's not that it doesn't work. It's that working perfectly might not be enough, unless the rest of the system around it is working too.